Good evening, I'm David Kramer with Alaska Weather. As always, please visit our website, weather.gov/Alaska. Get updates to the forecast or check out any watches, warnings, or advisories that we might have out for your area. You can also call our weather info line at 1-800-472-0391. Get updates to the forecast for that means as well. And you can email me at the address at the bottom of the screen, david.kramer@noaa.gov. Starting off, I do want to put out a reminder that this is Flood Safety Awareness Week. So remember to stay informed, obey all the education orders, practice electrical safety, avoid floodwaters. This is what happens during flooding. And then after flooding, we want to continue to avoid those floodwaters. Avoid disaster areas, heed road closed and cautionary signs, wait for all clears, contact family and loved ones. During that time, primarily, you want to protect yourself, make sure that you're safe, get away from any of the dangerous locations before checking on people that are not necessarily living with you or currently with you at that time. That's something that we want to do after the flooding has happened. Another part of flood safety, we talk about turnaround, don't drown. If you see floodwaters out there, don't risk it to think that it is passable without knowing what's underneath. Some of the roads could have washed away, some of the paths or ice could have moved without you really knowing if it's some muddy or dirty or water. Know that over 50% of all flood fatalities happen in vehicles. It only takes 6 inches of moving water to knock an adult off their feet, and it only takes 12 inches to pick up and float a small vehicle, carry it away down the road. So be mindful of that, especially in vehicle-related incidents. Also with flood, we are seeing some warmer temperatures coming in, especially as we move into this weekend, but overall we're on that warming trend, and we're getting into that time of the year where we do expect warmer temperatures in general. With that being said, we need to worry about ice conditions, especially for those that are traveling across frozen rivers or out on lakes. We are seeing those warmer temperatures, so pay attention to how much the ice is thinning, and think twice before you get on the ice. We do want to be very mindful of this time of year as we move into breakup. So as we are entering the breakup time, we are going to start showing our Alaska breakup map. Right now we're seeing most all of the major rivers around Alaska are still mostly ice, so not as much concern right now, but it is getting into that breakup season. In fact, later in this program, we'll be joined by Dr. Jessica Cherry, and she'll be giving us a River Watch update as we move through, and we are also going to start looking for some help from the field. So everybody out there, we need your help as we move into Riverwatch. What we're looking for is any kind of spotter reports or pictures and videos. Those are all wonderful for us to have to get an idea of what the rivers are doing. We will have our personnel from the River Forecast Center, as well as some of our service hydrologists flying around to get some updates on the river, but everything that we can get from people who live out there. If you're on a river that has to deal with a lot during breakup, if you have a lot of ice jams in your area, any information that you can give us will be helpful. If you're there, give us spotter reports. You can email me at the address on the screen, nws.ar.aprfc@noaa.gov, or you can call the number there, 1-800-847-1739. We'll take any of this that we can get. We really love the pictures and videos of your area. Anything that you can help us as we try to get through this breakup season. Taking a look now at our satellite imagery, see out over much of mainland Alaska, we have some higher level clouds that are bringing in some precipitation, but we also have quite a bit of low level cloud in the low-lying areas that are bringing in some lighter precipitation at this time. As we look out west, we can see a lot of high pressure out over the Aleutian Islands, but way out to the west, past the western Aleutians, we are starting to see a new system come in very slowly to the area. And then finally out over the Panhandle area, central and northern locations are seeing some cloud cover as well. Taking a look at our weather for the remainder of the day, we'll focus first on our high pressure that's out over the central and western Aleutians. Ridging from that is extending out over the southwest coastline as well as jutting up towards the Seward Peninsula as well, keeping these areas relatively dry. We will start to see some snow for the central Aleutians as well as out by the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. But as we get by Kodiak Island in south central Alaska, quite a bit warmer there. We are going to see primarily rain at any low-lying areas. Really, the mix of rain and snow is only going to be at the higher elevations in the mountains. We do expect rain where most communities are going to be located. That's going to be true in much of the interior as well, but as we get farther to the north, especially as we approach the Brooks Range, we are going to start to see some more snow for central and eastern locations. Up along the Arctic coastline, we'll see some low clouds, but not a lot in terms of precipitation until we get out by Kaktovik. And then down in the Panhandle area, pretty dry in terms of precipitation. However, there are some lingering high clouds over the area. As we move into tonight, high pressure is continuing to dominate much of the state, with one of the main highs out there by the central Aleutians and the southern Bering Sea extending up into the southwest mainland. We do have some lingering snow showers in the interior as well as through much of the western Alaska range, but primarily the high pressure is dominating the area, keeping most locations fairly dry. Up along the west coast, as we get towards the Bering Strait area, we will see some light snow there as well, and we'll see some fog in these locations, pushing up towards the Chukchi Sea coastline and out by Point Hope. Down in south central Alaska should be pretty dry, and that's going to be true in the Panhandle as well. However, these locations will still see a fair amount of cloud cover tonight. And then as we get out by the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, we're going to see primarily snow there. But as we move out by our other system, out by the western Aleutians, as we get that strong push of southerly flow, we are going to see quite a bit of warmer temperatures, and we will see some rain primarily for the western Aleutians for tonight. As we move into Friday, that system is going to push farther to the east, bringing in those warmer conditions closer towards the central Aleutians, and following behind the cold front by the western Aleutian lines, we will expect precipitation to turn back to being primarily snow. High pressure will now have moved over mainland Alaska, with ridging extending out through the southwest coastline down into the Aleutian Islands, keeping most areas from the central mainland down through the Aleutians fairly dry. There will be some lingering rain showers by Kodiak Island, but south central Alaska, much of the interior and west coast should be pretty dry with just some lingering snow showers around the interior. However, as we get up to the northwest coastline, we will still see some areas of snow and blowing snow up through the Utqiagvik area, and some areas of fog out by the Kotzebue and Norton Sounds extending out by St. Lawrence Island. Finally, down in the Panhandle area, cloud cover will remain, but we will still see primarily dry conditions. As we move into Saturday, high pressure continuing to dominate the mainland as well as the Panhandle area. That the central portions of the high will have moved over northwestern Canada, but ridging will extend throughout all of the mainland, keeping the area pretty clear and dry. And we'll start to see some clearing down in the Panhandle as well. We are expecting some sunnier conditions on Saturday and quite a bit warmer temperatures as well. As we drop down into Kodiak Island and Alaska Peninsula, we'll see some rain there and a mix of rain and snow for the eastern Aleutians. Our old front will have pushed into the central Bering Sea. Will be start to phasing out now. We will still have some snow throughout the central Bering, extending down through the central Aleutians. Taking a look at our temperatures, we'll start off in southeastern locations. In the Panhandle, we are going to see Friday morning low temperatures dropping down into the 30s. However, some places like Sitka will stay in the lower 40s at 41 for Sitka. As we move out over south central Alaska, temperatures near the coast are going to drop down into the mid-30s. However, for Cook Inlet and interior locations, dropping down into the 20s. And for Talkeetna and for Glen Allen, dropping down to 25 degrees. Let's look at our Friday afternoon highs, staying out in south central area. Most locations getting up into the 40s anywhere near the water. However, in interior locations, Talkeetna and Glen Allen going to get up to right around 50 degrees. Down in Kodiak, we are going to get up to 43 degrees. And then in the Panhandle area, most locations getting up into the mid-50s. However, warmer as we get farther to the south, where we will get near 60 degrees. For Saturday morning, temperatures are going to drop down to near 40 for southern locations and then to the mid-30s for northern locations, and at Yakutat dropping down to 31 degrees. For south central locations around Cook Inlet, dropping down into the 20s, dropping down to near 20 for interior locations, and then along the North Gulf Coast down into the lower to mid-30s. Kodiak dropping down to 34 degrees. Saturday afternoon highs Out in the south central area, we're going to stay in or get up into the 40s for most locations. Getting a little bit warmer as we get to more interior locations, 51 for Talkeetna. And then Valdez is going to be the warmest for south central, 53 degrees. Panhandle going to be in the mid to upper 40s or 50s for northern locations, and then near 70 degrees in those southern locations. Moving up into the interior portions of the state, we are going to see temperatures for Friday morning drop down into the teens to lower 20s, up along the Arctic coastline into the single digits, and along the west coast near 20 degrees and into the teens for some locations. As we look into Friday afternoon in the interior, getting up into the 40s, in the 30s through the Brooks Range, and the 20s along the Arctic coast. Down the west coast of the state, right around freezing. For Saturday morning in the interior, dropping down to near 20 degrees, getting warmer as we get farther to the west. Up along the Arctic coastline, out west, we're going to drop down into the 20s, and then the teens out east, and in the 20s along the west coast. For the interior on Saturday, getting up to near 50 degrees, colder as we get farther to the north, in the 30s along the coast, and then in the 30s also down the west coast. For southwest Alaska, in the 20s for Friday morning lows, near 30 for the Bristol Bay area, and then for the Aleutians in the lower to mid 30s. Friday afternoon highs in southwest Alaska, into the 30s for the YK Delta, lower 40s for the Bristol Bay area as well as the Alaska Peninsula, and then near 40 degrees for the Aleutian Islands, with Adak getting up to 44 degrees, St. Paul up to 37. As we look into Saturday morning lows in southwest Alaska, YK Delta in the 20s, near 30 degrees for the Bristol Bay area, in the 30s for the Alaska Peninsula as well as the Aleutian Islands, and St. Paul getting just below freezing at 31 degrees. Saturday afternoon highs in southwest Alaska. Near the coast, it's going to be a little bit colder actually in the mid-30s there, but interior locations in around Bristol Bay into the mid-40s. Mid-40s to lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutian Islands are going to get right about 40 degrees, with Unalaska getting up to 43 degrees.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, welcome to our aviation weather segment of the show and the flying weather for Friday morning. Something to keep in mind. This is going to be a theme through the weekend. We're going to have an area of high pressure that extends from the eastern Bering all the way through the central mainland and into northwest Canada. And given the amount of increasing daylight and melting we're experiencing, that's going to introduce some low-level moisture that's going to create some areas of lower stratus clouds and areas of some fog, especially in some of these interior valleys and low spots. So this is going to tend to form overnight into the early mornings before tending to lift or dissipate a bit as we go through the main heart of the day and in the afternoon. That'll be the case Friday morning. We do have a broader area of IFR conditions out over the central Bering Sea, but otherwise you can see those areas across interior Alaska as well as the southeast. And then by afternoon, conditions improve vastly with generally VFR across much of the interior. And areas of IFR will be possible in well offshore there in the Gulf of Alaska and the central and western Aleutians. And then by Saturday morning, there'll be some pockets of IFR conditions redeveloped there along areas of the Yukon Valley and north of the Alaska Range. Also, again, areas of the southeast remain in IFR as we'll see a weak system approaching the far west there with some areas out over the central Bering into the west coast, and then conditions improve again as we head into Saturday afternoon across much of the interior with a few areas of IFR, the southwest peninsula, and back toward the central Aleutian. So past conditions for Friday. Starting out, IFR at Anaktuvuk becoming VFR for the afternoon. That'll be the case at Adigan as well, IFR becoming VFR as we get the mixing of the day. And then heading southwest, MVFR at both Lake Clark and Merrill becoming VFR. And that'll be the case for Rainy Pass, MVFR to VFR, as will Windy, starting out with MVFR conditions to VFR. And generally, Isabel will see VFR conditions throughout the day on Friday. Mentasta will see VFR become MVFR. And Tanita, MVFR becoming VFR for the afternoon. And generally, Portage will enjoy VFR conditions throughout the day on Friday. And look for areas of the southeast to be MVFR to near IFR becoming VFR in the afternoon at Chilkoot and White. So freezing levels have increased upwards above 6, 8, even 10,000 feet across the southeast peninsula, down near the surface there, especially for the morning hours along south central, and then as you go out over the Bering Sea and especially the Aleutians, we are expecting freezing levels to generally be around 6 to 8,000 feet. And the potential for some icing there south of Kodiak Island, generally above 2,000 feet, a little more moisture there. And then in the Panhandle, above 4,000 feet. Looking at the upper level winds, strongest winds will be out of the northeast there over the southwest peninsula, upwards to 100 knots. We see southwest winds over the southeast around 65 knots, and then out there toward Russia, there's a maximum of some southwest winds of 120 knots as we come down. You'll be able to see that area of high pressure extending from the eastern Bering across south central into northwest Canada, with the strongest mid-level winds at 9,000 feet there across the western Bering on up into far eastern Russia on the order of 70 to 80 knots. And then bringing it down to 3,000 feet, high pressure continues to dominate the eastern Bering across much of the central, south central mainland into northwest Canada, with an area of low pressure there, far western Aleutians producing some southwest winds upwards of 60 to 70 knots at 3,000 feet, mainly out there around and north of the western and central Aleutians. And then finally, the best chance of any turbulence coming up here for the day on Friday, parts of the northwest into the western Seward Peninsula. See the potential for some turbulence between the surface at 4,000 feet, and then the western entering the central Aleutians, generally below 3,000 feet. So that wraps it up for your aviation weather. And again, as always, check the latest observations before you head out on a flight.
Hey there, star friends. What is better than stargazing Han Solo? Stargazing with friends. Maybe you're on a video call with a friend down the street or spending time outside with your friends. Why not look up? This week, I've got 2 new things to point out to star newbies. First, look west anytime after sunset later this week and watch the moon do a little scoochie with Mars, what astronomers call a conjunction. On Friday, the moon will lead Mars in their path across the sky, and then on Saturday, Mars takes the lead. And second, turn from Mars to the north or right of Mars and the moon, and you should see a giant W in the sky. That is Cassiopeia. Her upside down throne is one of my favorite constellations to spot. And if that's not enough, next week is the Great Lyrid Meteor Shower too. So grab a nerdy friend, and together, even physically distant, you can keep looking up.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Cherry from the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, bringing you the first 2021 Breakup Outlook for Alaska. I'm going to tell you today that Alaska has above average risk for flooding on the upper Yukon and Kuskokwim rivers in some locations. Let's get into the details. Components that we consider when we make this breakup outlook include ice thickness and its strength, the snowpack, and the spring weather pattern. Late April and early May temperatures control the rate of snowmelt, the thermal conditions and integrity of the ice, and the type of breakup, whether it's mechanical and very dynamic or thermal and melts in place. We use freezing degree days as percent of normal as a proxy for ice thickness across the state, and this shows that ice thickness on our larger rivers is just about normal throughout the interior. We have higher ice thickness on rivers in south central and lower in southwest, but throughout the major rivers in the interior, it's about normal. One exception on the upper Yukon is that there were freeze-up ice jams this last fall, and that led to jumbled and very thick ice on the upper Yukon. Now let's look at the April 1st snowpack. Through our agency partners, we know that snowpack is well above average in the Kuskokwim Basin, and it's above average in the upper Yukon on the Canadian side near the headwaters. It's below average snowpack in the AKwx Basin and well above average in the northern southeast panhandle. It's above average in the southern Seward Peninsula, and it's average or below average other places. Finally, let's take a look at the climate outlook over the next couple weeks. The 6-day temperature trend ending April 24th shows likely to be normal temperatures in the interior and south central Alaska, likely to be above normal temperatures in southwest and western and northern Alaska, and over the Gulf Coast and Copper River Basin, likely to be below average. The following week, over the 8 to 14-day temperature trend, we're looking at likely above normal temperatures throughout much of Alaska, in particular in southwest. So we're trending towards a mechanical breakup on Alaska's major rivers. Flood potential on the Kuskokwim and upper Yukon is above average. Flood potential on the North Slope and AKwx basins is below average due to the low snowpack. And we have average flood potential in other parts of the state. Here's our graphic that shows some of that information. So in terms of snowmelt runoff compared to average, we're looking at below average on the northern half of the state, and throughout some of the interior, above average snowmelt conditions. At the village level, we're looking at moderate flood risk at Eagle and Circle in parts of the Kuskokwim. We're looking at low flood potential in the lower Yukon and many other communities. We're going to be launching our River Watch effort. This is a collaboration with the state of Alaska and local communities to monitor breakup here in the next couple weeks. On our website, you can find our breakup map. This will be updated daily as we receive new information from satellite sources and community calls. Here's some of our online resources. Take a look at our website for the current breakup outlook as a text product, for our Alaska breakup map, and the graphical breakup outlook that I showed you. Finally, we need your observations. Please submit those on our website, send us an email, or pick up the phone and give us a call at one of these numbers. Thank you. Be safe.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back to our show, and to conclude today, we will wrap up with the marine weather outlook. So today's sea ice edge, it extends there into the central Bering near St. Matthew Island. In areas west of St. Matthew, we'll see southerly winds out ahead of a frontal system, which will cause the ice to shift northward. However, east of St. Matthew Island, winds will have more of a northerly component, and this will allow some of the shoreline ice to drift southward, and this could open up some polynyas, especially along portions of the west coast with the southward facing coastlines there, especially Nunavik Island and on over toward the Yukon Delta. Otherwise, we are going to be looking for at least temperatures continue to moderate here. Interior areas will be under high pressure here through the weekend, with warming daytime temperatures as we are approaching the breakup season, and each day we're gaining about nearly 6 minutes of daylight. So areas of southeast Alaska for Friday's marine forecast, generally a northerly component to the wind. The inner waterways, winds out of the north at 10 knots, waves running a couple of feet from Juneau southward through Ketchikan. And for the open waters off the coast, winds will be north-northwest around 10 to 15 knots, waves generally running as high as 6 feet. And then as we go through Saturday, look for generally a northerly flow in the inner waterways, little stronger winds up there north of Juneau towards Skagway and Lynn Canal, and waves running 3 upwards to 6 feet. But areas of the Gulf of Alaska will see more of an easterly component to the wind, up around 15 knots with waves 5 to near 6 feet. And then for south central areas, we are looking for generally north northwest winds around 10 knots or so, and Prince William Sound waves running a couple of feet there east of Whittier toward Cordova. Off the Kenai, generally 4 to 5 feet, as well as the mouth of Cook Inlet, northwesterly at around 15 knots and waves 4 feet. On Saturday, winds continue generally to have a northerly component, around 10 knots there at Prince William Sound with waves of 2 feet. And Cook Inlet out of the north upwards to 20 knots and waves 5 to 6 feet, and off the Kenai and northeast to Kodiak Island, waves running a few feet. As we go across the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, winds will start out generally out of the northeast around 15 to 20 knots. Waves on the North Pacific side generally running around 6 feet, 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. And then on Saturday, we are looking for northeasterly winds 25 to near 30 knots on the Gulf and Pacific side, waves running 5 to 7 feet, 3 to 5 feet on the Bering side. And looking at the Aleutian chain, eastern Aleutians, winds generally having an easterly component, upwards around near 20 knots, and waves generally around 5 feet. As we get out toward the west, Shemya, there could see winds from the southeast upwards to 40 knots, waves 17 feet on Saturday. Winds will kind of be still having some sort of easterly component, more from the southeast there through the eastern central Aleutian chain upwards to 20 knots. And shifting, though, behind a frontal system to the northwest, 30 knots, 14 footers between Kiska and Shemya. And then for Friday's areas of the west and southwest, we are looking for winds to be over the ice out of the south, 15 to near 25 knots. Waves running around 7 feet at St. Matthew. And winds out of the south at 20 knots there. North, 10 knots, though, again, pushing that ice a bit southward east of St. Paul and St. George and the areas, especially there at Nunavik Island. And as we go into the day on Saturday, we are looking for winds to be out of the generally have an east to southeast component. Over the ice, 15 to 25 knots, but there, south of St. Matthew, 30 knots, waves 11 feet. And as we go along the northwest coast, especially from Seward Peninsula northward, winds will be 35 upwards to 40 knots off of Cape Lisburne and Point Hope over the ice there. And as we go into Saturday, winds will be south-southwest, winds 20-25 knots along the Arctic coast, and out of the south upwards of 30 to 35 knots there, again from the Seward Peninsula on up to Point Lay. And looking at the weather map here tonight, we do have a weak trough shifting up through the northwest coast with areas of fog. That frontal system off to the west will be weakening as it comes eastward on Friday. Generally, high pressure will rule here with quiet weather for the interior through the weekend.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.